What's up, everybody? Good evening. How are you all doing? My name is Likan Olawoye. I am the founder and CEO of BPTN. I am so excited to be, in the room with all of you today. You showed up. You showed up early. You showed up often, right? I'll give you an example. 5 minutes, in, we have over 500 people that have joined, right? This is the right type of conversation, right? We are in the right environment to really lean into this conversation. So I want to make sure you have an opportunity to really like lean into this. So if you have distractions around you, let's just back that away for the next hour or so, right? I have, two incredible, panelists that are going to lean into this conversation. I want to, first of all, thank BPTN network, right? We are the largest network of Black tech in Canada, top 2 or top 3 in the US now, right? We are growing because of you, because Black tech professionals have something to say, right? Black tech professionals want to grow their career in tech, right? We are strong, we are motivated, we are engaged, we are prepared, right? Folks want to lean in, right? And it's very clear, right? We are clear now that we don't have a pipeline problem, right? We need to ensure that, we begin to close the engagement problem, the network gap, right? So, I want you to know that this conversation is an opportunity to lean in, right? So please lean into it, right? And I wanted to sort of take you through some things really quickly. So the first thing is, we are now full, right? We're getting close to 550, 600 people already, right? We're now streaming live on Facebook, right? Just for the folks that cannot get in, right? We are full. So you have an obligation. If you've never been to a BPTN event before, this is how we do it. Number one is you need to engage, right? Please do not be passive. You need to be an active, engage, person as part of this conversation, both here, but also on social. If you've not done this before, this is all of our social channels, right? Our tool of choice, of course, is LinkedIn, right? Not because, they're hosting today, but just because it is our, our sort of, platform of choice. And then, of course, we're on Instagram, right? We want to see your Instagram stories. Why is it important? Because many people want to be part of this conversation, right? And you've taken up a spot, right? So please share out loud, share widely, right? And be super, super, super engaged, right? Tag us, tag me, BPTN, right? We want to hear how this is landing with you, right? We want to make sure that we're bringing good content for our folks. So it's really, really important for us. The next piece is some housekeeping rules, right? So at the bottom of your screen, you will see a few things, right? You will be able to chat with us directly, right? So myself, the panelists, the team on the back end, right? So, I need you to engage there, right? And we're gonna test that out in a moment. And then the Q&A box. So if you want me to ask the panelists some questions, right, write it in the Q&A box. That's where I'm going to be looking, right? So it's really important. Engage in us, chat function. You want to ask a question, Q&A function, right? So take your time to do that. I'm gonna have our team up in a moment to make sure it's there, right? But it's incredibly amazing to be able to have you all engage with us here. So we're gonna start this out. So I miss you all. Like I miss seeing you all face to face and engaging you face to face. So I need to feel your energy a little bit, right? So I'm gonna make sure that we know what's up, right? You missed the hashtag. It's hashtag BPTN. Bottom right hand, you're gonna see it all the time, right? Hashtag us, connect with us. But I need you to connect with me, right? So our panelists are like they're feeding off your energy. So I want you in your chat function right now. Tell me what city are you logging into this meeting from, right? I want to hear directly from you. Tag in San Diego, Chicago, Detroit, San Francisco, Minnesota. All right, Toronto's there, San Fran, of course, Philly's in the house. There we go. All right, Ottawa, San Diego, Chicago, Nepal. There you go. Brampton, Louisiana. I see you, right? Vancouver, like you are everywhere, right? The 6th, of course. Oh man, everybody is here. Ireland, I just saw, right? That is awesome, right? Montreal, of course, London, right? That is huge. Chicago's in the house, of course, right? So that's good. Now the next thing is Detroit. There you go. I see you, Detroit, New Jersey, right? The next piece is I want you now tell me, what do you want to walk away with today? What is the one thing, right, as a Black tech professional or as an ally, right? Metro DC, I see you. Texas, there you go. What do you want to walk away with today, right? Hit me up. Let me see your energy. Like, what are you wanting to walk away, right? How do you become Atlanta? There you go. What do you want to see? Black empowerment. All right, right? You want to be part of the solution. Awesome, right? So understanding, collective understanding. There you go, right? What's next? I love that. Thank you for saying that. Right? So organizations, what are they doing? How are you being an ally? A call to action. There we go. Unity. I love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Learning, being collaborative. Okay, how to be an ally, tracking progress. All of this is really important for us. So please, you know, how to be authentic, how to show up well. That's awesome, right? Please keep going, right? This is how we are going to engage, right? You need to be fully engaged in this discussion, right? Do not be passive about it, right? Do not be passive. Please lean in, right? Because we need your energy. And I believe the Black tech community and the tech ecosystem can win. I strongly believe that we are set up for success. I strongly believe that we can do this together. I strongly believe that now is the time to be intentional. I strongly believe that the energy and the creativity that we bring to this, when we are all connected, will do something special. I strongly believe that, right? I believe you are here because you want to have this conversation. So, right, so let's lean into it. Let's build it. Let's be strong with it. Let's be encouraged by it, right? I'm pumped up for this, and I hope you're just as excited as me. So I have these two incredible leaders that are about to come to the stage. Right? They obviously, both of them are from LinkedIn, right? Greg Butler, Donna Alexander, right? They are strong leaders, and they're about to jump off in a moment, right? I want you to welcome them to the BPTN stage. We're so excited to have them, right? So Greg, you know, welcome to the stage. Donna, welcome to the stage, right? We are incredibly excited to have you. How are you all doing today?
Well, after that introduction, Lee Can, I'm doing a lot better than what I started off as. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for everyone for joining. And yeah, I'm excited to be collaborating with the incredible Donna.
Greg, you're getting a shout out for your shirt, right? So good for you. Right, there you go. Donna, how are you feeling? Like, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling excited. I am feeling definitely humbled. So excited that many of you are spending your Eastern time evenings with us. Hope that you gain something from our conversations. And if I can, just really quickly, hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I love you so much. Sorry. Happy New Year.
You got to shout out your Dukes. You got to shout out your Dukes all the time. There you go. Yeah. Right. Thank you both for being here. Right. So I want you to introduce yourself. Before we get into this discussion, I want you to introduce yourselves. And for the folks who have come in later, right, please make sure Q&A button, right, hit me up there. Keep engaging on our platforms. We want to be engaged with you. Right. So tell me a bit about you. Right. Let's start with Donna. Like, what was, you know, how did you get to where you are? What do you do now? Tell me a little bit about you.
A bit about me. So I work at LinkedIn, as we've already discussed. Fun fact, today is actually my 6-year anniversary with LinkedIn. Awesome. So that's very exciting. Always happy to be here. Prior to LinkedIn, I was a recruiter, and definitely, I would say one of my earliest memories in recruitment was around, quite honestly, some of the injustices around hiring practices, that we weren't able to interview people because of where they were from or because of their name. There was a lot of stigmas and some biases, and I feel like in a professional world, that was the first time that I saw it, that I recognized it. And for me, it was also the first real time where I decided that something needs to be said and something needs to be done. Currently at LinkedIn, I am an Instruct program manager, so I'm one of 2 people in the company. Shout out to Gemma, the person that you named from Ireland, who's here. Hey, girl. But in our role, we do sales enablement programs for our largest customers. So a lot of quality time with a lot of great organizations, but definitely always helping to move the needle forward in their modern selling, as well as their exposure to different cultures and different personalities.
Awesome. So a bunch of people are telling you congratulations, happy anniversary, right? So it's great to
Don't put
see.
In the chat, send cash, please.
Yeah, she says send cash, 100%. Right. So Greg, tell us about your claim to fame. How did you get to where you are now?
Absolutely, man. So I was incredibly involved in politics, but also in student associations when I was back in university in undergrad. Graduated and fell into the world of tech, like many of us who had no idea what it was. And since then, I've just been enjoying the ride through. So started off in a sales capacity, selling through a little known company back then called Indeed.com. Transitioned into more of a strategic sales role and actually joined LinkedIn about 5.5 years ago to kick off their customer success organization. Through my journey at LinkedIn, it's been incredible. I've held a number of roles. I've been able to work with the likes of Donna and many of our members of our team who are joining the call today. Appreciate all of you. Thank you guys for joining, along with our Black colleagues, the Black External Network in Toronto, as well as our allies. And from that perspective, I stepped into a leadership role exclusively because I love helping people. I love inspiring people. I love transforming careers. I loved the transformation that I've been able to go on for the last 6 or 7 years. And truthfully, I just want to be in a position to help people, hence why we're having the conversation we're having today. If no one else, the Black community has been my strategic focus amongst any other group. I wonder why. But nonetheless, I've been moving towards the idea of creating a safe space to help anyone who's journeying along to figure out where they stand as far as racial equality and justice goes. So again, super excited to be here and ready to get things kicked off.
Wonderful. Thank you both. So people are really liking your shirt. Like they keep saying it's awesome. So, I think I should get style points because I did say, go for it.
I might have to copyright this, man.
But I'm not gonna take that. You take the credit. You have the shirt. Right, so good for you. So let's get into it, right? And folks that are now listening, we're about to kick this off. So, the last 6 months have been tough for the Black tech community, right? Notice I didn't say the last 2 weeks. The last 6 months. We have been hit by 2 pretty massive viruses, right? And 2 pandemics all at the same time, a tsunami. The first is COVID, right? COVID has disproportionately impacted our communities in US and in Canada. We took a little bit longer to start collecting here in Canada, but we've started and we've seen it very, very clearly. It's disproportionate. We are dying at a higher rate, right? And we are, being affected at a higher rate. Right? And people say, oh, but you're, tech, blah, blah, but we have families, we have friends, we have people impacted, right? We are losing people, right? On top of that, we're losing jobs, right? Unfortunately, data is clear, right? That Black folks are usually the first to go, right? So that's an additional layer, right? On top of that. Now, on top of all of that, we have these racist situations that are not new, but are now being filmed, right? The situation with George Floyd, right? With Amy Cooper and what happened in New York. These things have been difficult for us. Yet we still needed to go to work. We still needed to show up, We still need to crush it, because you can't just coast, right? As a Black tech professional, right? Or professional working in tech. Tell me, like, how has these things that have taken place over the last few weeks impacted you? Like, how are you processing this stuff? Like, Greg, if you want to start with me, like, how are you processing what's going on?
Great question, Lee Can. When I look back at the last few weeks, as an adult male, specifically an adult Black male, this is the most I've cried in as long as I can remember. Unfortunately, I've had ties to not only the dual pandemics that we're experiencing, but also some of the areas where we've seen crime happen. New York based, now living in Chicago, two hard hit cities from a COVID perspective. Unfortunately, I've had losses in my family due to COVID. I'm consistently having to have the conversation of how to move people along their journey through how to deal with employees, how to deal with Black people in this state of mind. And it's taken its toll on me like I've never experienced before. The amount of vulnerability I've had to have, the challenging conversations I have to have, the fatigue I have going into work, the fatigue I have responding. In no way, shape, or form has this been a situation where I've been inspired to go to work. But as you've already stated, that's the only constant here. The constant is that we always have to show up and do our duty. What's not typical is that we never have the support systems that we need in place in order to get the job done. And Lee Ken, you mentioned the last 6 months have been difficult. If we're being honest, the last 400 years have been difficult. Since we arrived on this continent, since we were taken from our homeland. And one of the things I was having a discussion about earlier today is not only my frustration, but I feel like I'm in a weird position because I'm mad at myself for not doing more about racism prior to this moment. I'm mad at myself for not having these tougher conversations internally, despite the fact that I have. They haven't been in the scope of what we're doing here and what we're speaking about today. And truth be told, again, for the headline and the summary of it, I've had a horrible couple of weeks. I'm thankful for people that have checked in. I'm thankful for people that have asked me how I'm doing. But it's been awful and probably the worst moments of my life. And so I say that to say I do see a light of hope coming down the road. But I want to empathize and let people know it's not easy. Being a leader, being an individual contributor, being employed, being not employed, it's not easy. And I can appreciate that you're creating the space and we're creating the space to have these types of conversations to let people know we're all in this together.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. You know, Claudette Hutchinson is just giving you lots of love and asking you to lean into this stuff. 400 years, that's powerful, right? Well said, Peter says, right? Tell me, Donna, like, how have you been dealing with this stuff over the last little bit? You're on mute, Donna.
No, the truth is, I haven't been dealing well. I would say generally I have a pretty tough skin. There aren't a lot of things that can get to me, or especially that will affect me when I'm in a public forum, i.e. doing my job. Like Greg, I don't believe I have cried, i.e. right now, cried this much in years. Like even the worst breakup of my life, the loss of a loved one, it has just been nonstop because it is just to the core of my soul, it is sadness. I am sad that we as humans aren't nicer to each other. I'm sad that we're letting the worst parts of humanity win and take lives. I am sad that people don't understand why Black Lives Matter. I'm sad that people aren't speaking up when they see injustices. And I am sad that every day, much like many of you who I'm seeing popping up notes in the chat, And much like everyone who's here on this call, even though we're sad, we still have to shoulders back, smile on, and carry on. And it is hard. It is so, so, so hard. I'm balancing that with the rage that I feel at the injustices that I'm seeing, the rage that I feel when I talk to colleagues who aren't having meaningful conversations with their managers or with their friends or even their parents or their families, because that is such a missed opportunity. And at the end of it all, beyond the sadness and beyond the rage, my word, I'm exhausted. I am exhausted from trying. I'm exhausted from smiling. I am exhausted from the questions and the need for education. And it is definitely taken a toll on me. I'm actually finding that the past, I think 5 days we're at now, it's now creeping into my dreams. So I can't even escape through sleep. It is there when I'm awake. It is there when I'm working. It is there when I'm texting. It is there on social media, and it's there when I sleep. So it has been very, very hard. I did not think that it would be this hard. I thought I would be sad and I would rage and I would carry on. But this has left a lasting impact. And the only silver lining that I can see right now is that from many people, I'm hoping that the words that they're saying and the actions that they're taking will also have a lasting impact.
Thank you so much for that, Donna. There's lots of love being shown to you, lots of encouraging words being sent over. Thank you for your vulnerability on this. Thank you for your leadership on this. You know, a lot of times, I don't think ally communities know, you know, what we carry, right? You have to show up and be your best self, because it's hard to, you know, make excuses for not performing, right? And we get judged a lot harsher, right? We don't get, and this is a baseball term, we don't get on unforced errors, right? You don't get to make errors, right? So you got to show up. On top of that, there's additional pressures of, you know, speak to leadership about your experience, right? So I thank you both for this and for the conversation we're having. You know, Greg, tell me a bit more about now, like the now what, right? I'm going to jump into sort of the things that you wrote in a minute, but just before getting into that, you said some really powerful things, like 400 years of this stuff. We've been going at it. And I feel really sad that you felt this sense of, you know, like ownership of like, I should have been more. I should have, you know, done more, right? And I don't want you to feel that, because, you know, you're leaning into this stuff, right? But like, where do we want to do? How have you, what should we be doing right now with just, and still just talking about Black tech professionals, like the folks that are listening in right now that just want to hear from you and hear your strength? What should they be doing right now to like deal with some of the things that you dealt with?
Yeah, great question, Lee Can. And Donnie, you had me in tears, girl. I can't do that again. Don't do that to me. Honestly, it's the community conversation. As I mentioned earlier in the call, I'm based, or was from, New York City. I moved to Chicago about a year ago, so I've been working on building connectivity, building friendships, building relationships. But the reality is, none of my family is here. I'm in isolation. And so one of the things that I've been doing is making sure that now is the time that I connect to everyone and anyone who's giving me energy and power to move through my day. The second piece is understanding that it's okay not to know what to do. It's okay not to know what to say. There are days that I go into work and I don't want to talk to a single soul. There are days that I don't feel like going to work. There are days where I show up and I know that I can't be the manager that I need to be for my team. So I have to lean on other people to do the work that I see for myself. And that is really, really hard for me, especially coming from a background where our parents, our families encourage us not to ask for help. They encourage us to stick through and prioritize and organize and do what you have to do to get it done, but do not put a hand out to ask other people for assistance. That is truthfully the most challenging aspect of growing up Black, at least from my culture, my family. And in this scope, this is absolutely a time to disregard that advice. That is one of the saving graces for me, is relying on my community, my family, my friends, my colleagues, my team. For those of you on the call, you mean everything to me. My manager, my leaders internally, and just have these truthful conversations. Lekan, I brought a level of vulnerability to the table that I've never had to bring before. I've talked about things at work that I've never had to discuss. And it feels wrong until it feels right. It feels wrong thinking about it until I do it. And when I do it, that's the decisive decision that I make, and it's only felt great as a result. I go into the workplace understanding that just because someone's a VP versus a director versus the lowest person on the totem pole, everyone is human at the end of the day. And everyone has the same feelings. We don't all have the same experiences, but we do push through the same emotions. And having that in the back of my head and moving into conversations, again, is what enables me to be as transparent and real as possible. I'm bringing people along on my journey they can. I'm helping people understand why I feel the way I feel. Helping people understand, why I do the things that I do, why I need time off of work. And we're going to talk about this in a bit around the scope of what we should be doing to help out, what we should be telling our allies, how we should be educating, and what we're not doing. But if you haven't reached the breach of having a constructive conversation with someone around the way that you're feeling, that is the first place to start. Other than that, man, I've honestly been avoiding as much social media as possible. It is the most depressing time to be on Instagram, to be on Facebook, YouTube, watching news. And I have realized how much of a trigger that is for me to put me into the scope and the negative thoughts of what's happening in the world. And I've tried to find things that I either need to be doing or haven't been doing, inclusive of reading more. I've tried to find shows to binge watch that have nothing to do with what's going on in the world. I've tried to create safe spaces for myself to really check in on my friends and talk about things, review memories, talk about vacations that we went on a while back. But then the scope and the headline of what I'm saying is I've tried to do everything that I possibly can to ignore what is happening, realizing there's only but so much of that I can do. And I encourage everyone to take a lens of how can you deprioritize what's going in the world and prioritize yourself and your self-worth.
Perfect. Donna, you want to add to that?
Sure. I think it's so interesting because, Greg, one of the things that I've actually been doing is prioritizing social media. And the reason for that is because I know in my circle and the way, for example, that I grew up surrounded by a ton of white people, and many of them will have no idea like what this experience is like. And so as painful as it can be, I found it has actually made me louder and a lot more vocal on social media. And that was the other reason that I wrote a post on LinkedIn, is partially because for me, writing's always been therapeutic. You could probably ask my mom the number of like journals and diaries. If I had a thought, I would write it down. And that has really continued with me to this day. Whenever there's something that's tougher that I need to work through, especially if it's really emotional and really, really tough, I would always turn to writing. So I wrote the post, and the second I hit publish, I felt ill because, Greg, to your point, it was a level of vulnerability, not with colleagues, not with friends. It was potentially with 675 million people. And that's a lot of people. It's a huge audience, but it's also a lot of people whose intentions and interests I have no idea of. So I wasn't sure how it was going to be received. All I knew was that I had to do it to make myself feel better. And I knew that a side benefit would be to put a face, a real face, a familiar face, let's say, to what's happening. Because if all you're seeing is something that happens far away, to a person whose name you hear and the hashtag you see, it's not really going to have that proximity experience. So being able to put a real face to the atrocities and to the tragedy, I have found has been a really good side benefit, but still really tough nonetheless. And I think the only other thing that I would add as far as what I've done is just setting boundaries, like being aware of the fact that I have no more capacity to do anything else after X time based on the way that my calendar works. Thankfully, I have a manager who has been very understanding, and I'm able to say, I cannot work on Friday because this week, just even from Monday, I know it's going to be too much and I need a minute. So being able to have the space, but also the connection. So also being very intentional of staying away from my phone after my official work hours so I can be connected to my cat, hi Edwin, and to my husband so I can make sure that he sees that I'm focused on us, and plus it gives me someone in person who makes me feel better. I love you, Brian. He's also on the call.
I think you brought up an awesome point though, in that we live in separate places. We have completely different experiences, yet we've got to the same place, which is writing our thoughts down and expressing ourselves on paper in order to move forward. And I think it's interesting in that people should understand none of us should feel the same way about what's going on, and none of us will feel the same way about what's going on. Yeah. We're each going to go through our different stages of feelings and emotions. However, there are different methodologies and there are different tips and tricks to really process this. And it's really all about you finding what works for you. And somehow, some way, writing worked for both of us.
Mm-hmm. So I think, it's like letting it out, right? Yes. Figuring out the way that works for you and letting, if it's writing, if it's crying, if it's going for a run, hopefully safely, we'll touch that in a moment, right? If it's, spending time with your family, your loved ones, right? But getting it out, right? Because, some folks have spoken about like the mental health, right? Of Black tech professionals, that we are holding ourselves together. We're holding our families together because at times we are breadwinners, right? So, those things have been difficult, right? Those things have been different, right? So, it's really important to let it out. So, we started talking about social media. So let's talk about your post, Greg, right? You posted something powerful for allies, right? And I think, colleagues are it's in the chat now. We can repost it in case it's sort of lost in the chat. Folks that are in the meeting, please, put it up there and, click on it, right? You posted something powerful, right? Talk to me about, what took you there with your co-author to build it and to bring it together. What were you hoping to accomplish by it? And maybe talk about it a little bit more as people are opening the link now.
Yeah, thank you for teeing that up, Lee Ken. I'm thankful that I can tell this story knowing my boss is on the phone, but he played such an important part in this. After the Ahmaud Arbery shooting and killing, I was experiencing, similar to Donna's point earlier, a sense of rage that I had never felt before. And the rage was coming from a multitude of different experiences, but it was also surfaced around the fact that I was having this conversation amongst all of my friends that I knew. Nothing at work had been mentioned yet, and it had been days since the actual murder itself. So through a lot of frustration that I had, I picked up the phone and called my boss, who first and foremost talked me off a ledge, but secondly, put forth an activation like I've never seen. He gave me permission to take the space that I needed, take the day off, take the week off, do what you have to do to get yourself together. He then went internally and activated all of his colleagues, his peers, his leaders, to say, let's not look behind us and understand that the situation hasn't been brought up. Let's think about what we can do to react immediately. And through that conversation, that context, he gave me the confidence to create the space where I'm encouraging other colleagues to do the same thing, but directing it specifically towards employees of marginalized groups, and more specifically towards Black employees in today's time. So the tool was created out of a sense of urgency. It was created out of frustration. It was created out of panic. It was created out of not knowing what to do. But from a leadership perspective, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, my call to action in my life, from my perspective, is to help people. I put all my thoughts aside and put my feelings aside and worked alongside a gentleman named Kwesi Graves at LinkedIn as well to come up with a strategy to help our colleagues deal. It wasn't just for my allies. It wasn't just for other managers in the room. It wasn't just for the Black employees. It was encompassing of everyone. When you are having a struggle, when you're having a difficult conversation, here's how you check in. Understand that someone might not be willing to talk. Understand that checking in is better than saying nothing. Understand that having a voice and having that concern honestly buys you loyalty from an employee. It buys you so much trust. It buys you so much respect when you have the confidence to not know what you're talking about, but be honest about that and lead with the conversation anyway. In addition, the tool itself just talked a little bit about the importance of checking in, feeling okay if you mess up, not worrying about whether you're saying the right thing, but instead worrying about the person that's hurting on the other side. And it went into a couple of immediate action items for allies around the education of what they can do right now, but just as well other things that should be happening in an organization nonetheless to support the growth of marginalized groups at any given time.
So what can allies do right now?
Yeah, I think for one, it's understanding that we're not expecting you to have all the answers. We're not expecting you to come in with a plan of action. We just want to be recognized and heard and seen. I want you to know that I'm having a challenging time, and when I come in on Monday morning, I do not want to talk about what's due on Tuesday. I do not want to talk about how your weekend went. And the worst question you can possibly ask is, how was your weekend? What did you do this weekend?
How are you?
How are you? It's just, it's so encompassing of someone that just doesn't have a moral understanding of what's going on in the world. And this is particularly when you know what's happening or when you've heard about what's happening, come in with a sense of just listening. Come in and seek to listen, seek to provide an opportunity for someone to vent, and seek authenticity, right? If you know someone's not doing well and they tell you they're doing well and you have a great relationship with that person, call them out. Say, hey, you're not your usual self. I sense something's off, something's going wrong. And for those that are on the opposite side of that, feel encouraged to come into work and not smile and say, I'm okay. This is the space and the time for us to be able to do that, because what it will do is challenge your managers, challenge your directors, challenge your leaders to figure it out. It's not our job to do that. In addition, just a couple of other things that allies can do. It's calling out inappropriate behavior when you see it. If you hear someone talking and it doesn't sound like it's in the right vein, make sure you call them out and don't let them get away with that. Join an ERG, join an employee resource group if you have them available at your company. If not, create a community of individuals that you can rely on, that you can speak to at any given time, even if it's just a group chat. For leaders, become a sponsor at an organization. Make sure you are supporting people from marginalized groups in the growth of their careers, and you're not just looking at who's on your team. Use inclusive language. We're not the only marginalized group of people out there. And despite the fact that the scope of today's conversation is related to Black people, we need to do a better job of using inclusive language as well to support other marginalized groups. Prioritizing diversity recruiting is another one. Just making sure that you have a diverse slate in your pipeline. And lastly, it's recognizing your privilege. Recognizing the fact that even though we may have grown up in the same town, even though we may have went to the same school, you will always be provided more opportunities than I will, specifically due to the color of my skin. And that should be noted. If we're equal, you'll always have a leg up being white if I'm Black. And that's something that just has to be understood by those that are looking to pursue their allyship journey.
So let's talk about privilege. Like, let's lean in a little bit on this, right? Donna, I would love to hear your, because, sometimes our allied communities, say things like, I don't see color, right, say things like, I don't understand my privilege. What do you mean by that? I worked just as hard, right? Like, talk to me about, like, you know, how that stuff lands with you when we're talking about privilege, when we're talking about, like, just own it and know what it is, right? Tell me about, like, how that, like, talk to me about privilege. Talk to me about how that, you know, where you stand on that stuff.
Privilege is real. It definitely exists. I think that the finest example of someone recognizing privilege, and it's ironic, I actually mentioned this story earlier. We had a former VP at LinkedIn, Mike Yamson, excellent man. In one of our fireside chats, somebody had asked him essentially, to what do you attribute your success? So how did you get to be where you are? And his answer was very simple. He said, honestly, it's two things. He's like, I'm a man, and I'm white. And so literally everyone in the audience was like, what did this man just say? And he clarified, saying that he's no better than anybody in the room. He's not a special individual. He's not a, you know, a crazy skill set, crazy unique human being. But one of the things that he did have going for him is that he had friends in powerful places. And by virtue of who he was in those relationships, it actually led him to get the position that he had, which he then brought in all of his friends in order to be able to build a team. And something that he and I had spoken about a few times, just by virtue of the relationship, was that he was apologetic. When he was first starting out and he was trying to build the team and really grow the way that LinkedIn would be shaped, he definitely said that he leaned on the familiar. He went to the people that he had worked with, not really considering the fact that everybody that he knew, everybody that he'd worked with, everyone in his circle, all looked like him. So he was able to, you know, he apologized for saying that the company and the way that we're structured now is based on some of the hiring practices in past. So I think personally, for me, having someone who is at his level stand up in front of his entire organization and recognize that this is how he got to be where he was definitely something that was eye-opening for a lot of people on the team. I thought it was a great example of vulnerability, but it would be, I think, unfair to say that privilege doesn't exist, because, like Greg had mentioned, the playing field is not level. And until it is level, we're not going to see diversity in leadership across C-suite or executives. And we need to make sure that we are building people up in order to enable them to really reach the heights that they want to be in order to affect and impact the change that we all need to see.
Perfect. Thank you, folks. I see all your questions. We will get to it. This is a great conversation. Please keep leaning into it. It's really, really important. You know, keep asking, keep commenting, right? It's giving these folks energy. We're having a conversation, you know, about our futures, about what is the future of tech here, right? So please keep leaning in. So Donna, you also posted something, right? That, you know, we're gonna repost and reshare in the chat now, right? Tell me about what was going through your, like, what was the post about, right? For folks who haven't seen it, what were you trying to convey to people, right? And what do you want to see out of that?
Sure. The post is simply called, I don't know how to act anymore. The reason the post came about was, as I mentioned at the top of the call, in my role, I host these customer workshops. And on the Tuesday, I was getting ready to start a customer workshop. So 3 hours face-to-face, talking about all the things LinkedIn, big smile on my face. I was ready to go. 15 minutes before I was set to open up the Zoom, I decided to log in and see what's happening on Instagram. For 8 minutes, I watched a man die. And 7 minutes after that, I had to welcome everybody to our workshop and to walk them through all of the highlights of Sales Navigator. And I mentioned in the article, it's the hardest pivot I've ever had to make. I've gone from being sad to being okay. I've gone, the other way, okay to being mad, like whatever the case is. But I've never had to go from seeing something so horrible in front of my face to then closing my phone and appearing on camera like everything is amazing in order to welcome my customers and let them know that we're going to be talking about all things LinkedIn. I did not know how to act. I got through the 4 days of the workshop. It went well. Thank you. But I have never felt so inauthentic in my life because it was not the way that I felt at all in the moment. And I mentioned, if we weren't in a pandemic, ordinarily I'd be conducting this workshop in person, and I probably would have done the exact same thing. I would have picked up my phone and seen what's happening on social media. I would have witnessed that event, but I feel very confident I would not have gone to work. I would have been somewhere in the southern United States leading this workshop, and I would not have been able to leave the hotel room just because of the absolute horror and grief that I felt. So I ended up sitting with that for a few days because, as I've mentioned, like if something is so traumatizing, and this is actual trauma, I just didn't know how to act. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know, quite honestly, how to be. All I knew is that what a miserable, miserable thing to see, and what a horrible thing to happen to any human being, regardless of skin color. For me, the writing was, quite honestly, it was therapeutic. And I needed to put it together. My mom asked me the other day, she read it. Hi, mommy. And one of her questions was around like, how long did it take you to write? It probably looked like it took you a few days. But for me, the thoughts all jumble and work together in my head for a number of days. And when I'm ready to put pen to paper or start typing, it happens. So it was a very quick thing to write because all of the feelings and the thoughts were there. Over the weekend, our Black inclusion group in Toronto, repping this sweatshirt here, we had put together an email sent out to the entire LinkedIn Toronto office because we wanted to provide people with, a statement, to provide them with resources. So I was able to take the resources that we shared with our wider audience in Toronto and add to the post, because the way that I see it, this is a very black and white issue, not to do with race or color. It's just like there's no shades of gray. Either you are a racist or you're not. If you are a racist, I have no interest in talking to you. I do not want you in my life. If you don't understand why this is important and heartbreaking, first of all, you need to get educated, and here are some resources, hopefully, that will help you see the light. If you are not racist, then I definitely want to make sure that we're continuing the conversation so that you become anti-racist, so that you are more vocal, so that you are sharing and really helping to stand up, not only for people of color, but for everybody, especially since, and let's recognize, we're currently in Pride Month. This is a month where we have another group very much similar to our own that is being persecuted for no other reason than the way that they were born. So much like us, they can't change their orientation. I can't change my skin color. So stop punishing us for things that we have no control over. So my hope was that these would be some resources that would help people to do the work, because as we've all mentioned, and I'm sure it's popping off in the chats as well, we're tired. We're tired because we're dealing with our own emotions, our own thoughts, and then it gets really tiring as well to educate others. So we want to make sure that we're providing people with a way to get information to be able to do the work so you can come have a conversation and we don't have to start from the very beginning.
Mhm. Thank you so much for that, Donna. So, there's a lot of questions right now being asked about, how does HR talent help, right? Two particular questions around like, so you want to have a conversation, you want to be an ally, and you're sort of trying to, manage this, like, I don't want to be intrusive and like ask you to relive this, right? At the same time, I want to be intentional about connecting in, right? Let's sort of start there. Maybe Greg, like how does allies like manage that sort of dual thought? I want to be supportive and lean into this, but at the same time, is this the right time? Like how do they have that conversation?
Yeah, great question. And the scope of having the conversation with a Black colleague or Black friend, no time is going to be the right time. You have to ask in order to get an answer. And the expectation of that person is that they'll give you a truthful answer and you can move forward. But there isn't a proper time to ask ever. In the same vein of that, we are continuously experiencing things over and over. And it's okay to check back. Just because I don't want to talk today does not mean I might not want to talk next week. It doesn't mean I don't want to talk 2 weeks from now. Until I tell you personally to stop, I think there's an ask and value in ensuring that if you truly have a connection to this person, if you truly have a relationship built with this person and it's authentic, we love being asked. We may not love answering, we may not love responding to you, and that's the other piece of it. You have to ask in the vein of, I don't have to respond to that, and that's okay. You can ask me, and the thought of me knowing that you reached out and sent a note in general, I'm going to see it and I'm going to acknowledge it. Whether I acknowledge it verbally, whether I acknowledge it socially, whether I acknowledge it in my brain. Just because I don't respond doesn't mean it is valuable. So that's one key component I wanted to make there. In addition, I think
it's important just to ask, right? And to do it in a place of absolute vulnerability. I don't know what to do. Maybe I even suck at this, but Greg, like, man, I see this stuff that's happening. How are you doing?
Yeah.
And just like leave it. And if you reciprocate, I lean into it. And if you don't, you at least acknowledge that, man, that guy cares.
Right.
It is the act of asking.
Right. And in the scope of that, you can even put something along the lines of, hey, Greg, just checking in. I know a lot is going on. You don't have to respond to this. I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. Hey, Greg. Hey, Donna, I hope all is well. I heard your story earlier today. You don't have to respond to this, but I want you to know I see when I hear you. You're valued in my mind. That is incredibly powerful in the scope of being uncomfortable, having that conversation, but also just trying to learn, trying to lean in. Because one of those times when you hit me up, I'm going to say, hey, today I actually want to talk to you. Yep. Today I actually want to have a conversation with you and let you know what's going on. I'm done crying this week.
Yes.
Processed it last week and I'm ready to talk. And that continuation is just the support that we need to continue to keep going and going and going. The check-ins that I've had from people at my organization, whether it's the leader of my organization, whether it's my team has held me down, texts, calls. It's not something that I look at and read and expect them to expect me to respond. They're just doing it out of the kindness of their heart and because they care about me. And I care about them. And that's the relationship you want to start to establish. That's the two-way street you want to establish. I don't need you to educate me. I don't need you to do things for me. I don't need you to answer these questions. I just want you to know I'm here for you.
Yeah,
awesome.
Agreed. And I think just to add beyond the I'm thinking of you, or I know this must be tough for you, or I hope you're okay. And obviously that caveat of no need to respond, it really goes so far and it's so fantastic. The other message that I received that quite honestly is one of my favorites, and I rank right up there with I love you, and I did tell him this as well, is you're important to me. So it was a general check-in, just making sure that everything was okay, but also saying how you feel matters to me because you're important to me. And when we come to all of the feelings that we're feeling right now, which are quite honestly, it's a damn roller coaster. It feels like every day or every hour sometimes. You want to make sure that you feel valued, which is a huge, huge thing, but it's also just feeling acknowledged. So to all of the allies on the call, all of the managers on the call, anybody who's in any shape of leadership, I think the very first thing that needs to happen is just the acknowledgement. In your team meetings, when something happens, it doesn't need to be an agenda item. Put it front and center. Like I know for all of the customer calls that I hold, I start off with a moment of acknowledgement because in March, the acknowledgement was, hey, we're all working from home because there's this pandemic thing happening and it's the worst. Now it's, we got the pandemic, plus we've also got all this overt racism. So giving people the space to say, it's okay to feel how you feel. It's okay to turn off your video whenever you would like. If you need to step away, I'm here to support that. But providing that to your customers, in addition to anybody on your internal teams, is incredibly valuable. And it really does help it helps to make someone feel like their feelings matter and they're important.
Thank you so much. So this conversation is really good, right? It is awesome. I am trying to, look at the time. We have another maybe 10 minutes, right? So I want to now dig into tech in Canada, tech in US, right? The industry. So how do we now move the needle, right? So everyone has sent out, all those messages, and they've donated dollars. I have a personal thing to say, fantastic that you donated dollars, it's a one-time thing, but what about your staff, right? But what about the people that are working for you, right? And maybe just because BPTN, that is our constituent, and I'm very, very focused on our constituent, but what about like the people like that you are working for now, today, that's working for you now, today, the environment now, today, hiring more now, today, promoting more now, today, right? So I'm really keen to really lean in. Like, so what is the role of people, managers, and HR? So now we know, hopefully, Black Lives Matter, and that is not, we're not debating that, right? And the fact that Black Lives Matter does not mean that the rest of other people's lives don't matter. My wife said something really interesting before I even ask you to answer that question. My wife said, so we have 3 small children, right? And they're loud and they eat all my food, especially now, right? And my youngest, my little girl, she's 6 years old, right? She's a little girl. That's what, like, she runs the show, right? Of the boys. And if my little girl today is hurt, right? So I have 3 children. If one of them is hurt, my little girl is hurt, I'm going to spend a little more time focused on her. It doesn't mean my other 2 boys don't matter. It doesn't mean I love them less. It means that my little girl has a particular need that I need to fill right now, right? I'm not going to neglect my other children, right? So they can, now also, have that same need, but I'm going to focus attention on her. So when people say Black Lives Matter, right, it means my little girl, Grace, matters, but my 2 other boys still matter, right? It is not the absence of my 2 other boys that my girl matters. It is the fact that my girl has a particular need right now, hence me spending the time and focus with her, at the same time making sure my other 2 boys are good. So just an example of, like, all lives matter, Black Lives Matter, that it's racist, right? Let's just call that what it is, right? It's not a lack of not knowing, right? And we need to just be aware of those pieces. Or it is ignorant, I don't know better, and we're happy to, I'm happy to educate you on some of those pieces. So moving on to what can companies do? Messages out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Greg, maybe let's talk about HR, let's talk about hiring, let's talk about retention, right? What should companies be doing right now as they are thinking about this stuff, as they are thinking about hopefully what we should do next beyond the announcement and the initial donation, right? What should they be thinking about in terms of hiring, recruitment, retention right now?
Yeah, great question, Lee Can. I think in terms of HR, in terms of hiring managers, but in terms of people, we all need to understand that it is not the responsibility of us to answer for our own oppression. It is not the responsibility of us to create the solutions or rules that have always kept us out of the playing field. And when I look into that, it's through the lens of HR should be willing and understanding of the mental capacity that the employees are facing right now, and the mental health struggles that employees are facing right now. Hiring managers should be cognizant of the makeup of their team. Is your team diverse? And if not, how are you going to get them there? You can do that through professional development. So as I mentioned earlier, becoming a sponsor, becoming a mentor to someone that is completely different from you, an employee of color, an employee from a marginalized group, someone that you can help get to the next level so that they can help their community surface internally. You can also look into professional development programs in your organizations. Are you helping people, specifically groups of people that are marginalized, that have less of a chance of getting to a leadership role than their counterparts? If you're in a company with 3% of people that are African American, what's the likelihood that all 3% of those people are going to reach a level of leadership? It's probably not high. It's going to be 0.5%. Of the 0.5% that reach that next level, what's the likelihood that some of them will get to the next level? So understanding the makeup of your organization and understanding how to influence not only the internal employees that are there, but also pipelining the external employees that are there are crucial. Being intentional about mentorship, being intentional about sponsorship, being intentional about having tough conversations, and relying heavily on HR as a hiring manager to give you those statistics if you don't have them. It's a collaboration between HR and talent acquisition and the hiring manager side of things. It's as much my responsibility if I'm hiring as it is for a talent acquisition manager or a recruiter to find me the talent. I should be looking as hard as they should be. I think the excuses that organizations, specifically from an HR, talent acquisition, and a hiring manager perspective make are null and void when you think about it in that scope. And so I've named a number of things, right? Grow the employees that you have in your organization. Sponsor and mentor the employees that you don't have on your team that would make for a diverse team. Pipeline talent if your talent acquisition isn't doing it for you. And if your TA team is doing it for you, help out. Leverage other talent, pass it over to other hiring managers who don't have more diverse teams. I can continue the list, but I feel like those are great starting places for managers in HR or talent organizations who are wondering, where do we start?
So it's really interesting because many, TA folks and companies have said, TA, you please go bring us some folks. But we know in tech, everyone in this meeting knows in tech that you hire from your network, right? No matter how much your TA people say, oh, I have 5 people for you. If I've sent out to my network and my network has 5 people for me and they're qualified, I'm probably gonna be like, I'm gonna lean to where I know. So if you as a talent manager, like a manager, a people manager, if you yourself, if your pipeline is not diverse, you're not doing it right? No matter how much your TA people bring, you are gonna hire from your network. So it is actually your network that is just as powerful as who they bring to you. And if the first time you're meeting a Black person is at an interview, it's too late. You're not gonna hire, right? So start beforehand. Those are some things. Sorry, I had to just jump in there because I know there's some things that we're gonna have our TA people do it. No. You're a people leader. You make sure that you yourself diversify your network, right? So please, don't just rely on your TA folks. You go out and do it as Greg just said. So Donna, what would you add to that? What should companies be doing right now?
So as you mentioned, definitely diversifying the network. Something that happened to me this afternoon that I thought was really amazing was an executive reached out and asked me what my plans were for the for my future, and saying as obviously a diverse employee, and as somebody with aptitude and ability, that she would be willing to spend time with me to figure out what that mapping would look like. So I think if you are in a leadership position, quite honestly, taking someone under your wing. If you don't know who that person should be, reach out to people across other lines of business, other organizations that you work with to understand what that talent looks like, because it is, again, very, very valuable. And honestly, it's not that hard to do. And then you mentioned diversifying the networks, as well, diversifying your TA. When we think of what these organizations should look like, obviously there should be diverse leadership, diverse ICs. There should also be diverse talent acquisition. So making sure that the people that you're using to recruit are representative of your organization will go a long way as well.
So people are asking, and I'm sorry, there's so many questions. I'm not going to be able to answer all of it. I'm sorry, or ask all of it. So people are asking about like, how does like an IC, individual contributor, right, influence their leaders to hire more diverse? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I can jump in. Put the people that you know that are in your network in front of the leaders. If you are an individual contributor and you haven't surfaced a profile or tapped someone on the shoulder to have a conversation with someone externally that is of a diverse nature, not to say you're as much at fault, but that's an easy opportunity for us to ensure we're getting the proper people positioned. The status and the social of what is tech these days was created based off of a number of things. For one, we obviously are all familiar with bro culture, right? We hire your friends. We can do that same thing. We can do the responsible thing of ensuring that the people around us that are from diverse backgrounds are in front of hiring managers. That's critical. Another piece of the bro culture is specific to Ivy League recruitment. So we need to start going to non-traditional functions and non-traditional schools to locate talent, because the talent is always going to be more diverse than what Ivy League's institutions provide. We need to make sure that we're checking on people with non-traditional backgrounds. People that don't necessarily reside in the space that you want them to reside in today, but have the transferable skill sets to move into that space and to learn that role later on. And last piece, for those that are starting organizations, for companies wondering how they can start from the ground up, the real question is, are you working with a venture capital firm that is mixed? Are you working with a venture capital firm that has women and people of color on their board? Or are you exclusively looking for funding from traditional statements of being all male and predominantly white male at that? And I think a number of those things will play into the different pieces and parts of where people are. If you're an individual contributor, you're focusing on making sure your network is aware of what's available. If you're starting a new business or you're an entrepreneur, you're focusing on making sure you're working with venture capital firms that are diverse. And if you're somewhere in between in the middle, to Donna's point, you're just making sure you're always and consistently diversifying that network to position people in front of other hiring managers when the time is right.
So Donna, as an individual contributor, how do you, like, you know, what would you say about how you get people, how should another individual contributor be diversifying their pipeline? Like what should they be doing to be able then to put diverse candidates in front of hiring managers?
I think taking advantage of any of the ERGs, so the employee resource groups, and really connecting with a more diverse candidate set. Also going to conferences or being able to attend and engage with people within the community, i.e. BPTN events. Shameless plug for you. There you go. But you do want to be able to go to a place where you can find people who are like you. When we think of what some of the biggest complaints are about not having diversity in leadership or diversity in organizations, it's because we've got people who don't look like us telling us how we should be acting and how we should be performing. So in order to help to bridge that gap, you do want to make sure that you are going to places where people like you hang out. So joining communities, joining groups, obviously there are groups on LinkedIn as well, but really finding out where in the community are the people who look like you and what are some of the skill sets they bring to the table that you would want to bring to your own organization.
So we've had a great conversation. I have a million other questions, right? You know, folks, I don't want to keep you away from your dinner and those types of things, right? But I wanted to just ask the last one. You know, pardon wisdom. What do you want to leave folks with as they leave this event tonight? What do you want them to be thinking? This is your 1 minute, you know, closing speech. right? About the things we didn't get to touch, right? How do you want to leave people tonight? And then I will come back on and I will close it up. So maybe Greg, you can start and let Donna sort of get her thoughts together, right? But what do you want to leave folks with tonight?
Yeah, I want to leave folks with the idea that diversity is not new. This is an initiative that was started in the 80s by Fortune 500 companies and government agencies at all levels to create diversity and inclusion for marginalized groups. We have been working at this since the 1980s, 40 years ago. So the first method and the first notion is, if you haven't gotten on board to creating a diverse culture, if you haven't gotten on board to creating a diverse team, you're actually 40 years behind in terms of the work that you're doing. But secondly, we have the perfect opportunity to reshape what organizations, what teams, and what companies look like. We have COVID, that's historical impact in terms of a pandemic. We have injustices that are rallying and gathering allies like I've never seen before, activating levels of allyship that are through the roof. We clearly have the opportunity as we go into rehiring at different organizations, as we go into pipelining, as we're getting ready to close out fiscal years and start new periods. We have the opportunity to create the change that we want to see. It's all up to us. And so my last piece is, it's an activation of not only allies, but of our community as well. We're tired, we're broken, we're sad, but we know we are in a perfect position to move the needle right now. So any part of what you can do to lean in and help, whether it's recruiting, it's surfacing people, it's having tough conversations, it's checking in on employees, whether it's creating tools of how to mask or master allyship and master diversity and inclusion, it's creating communities internally at your organizations. Don't be the one sitting down doing nothing. Do something to get activated and do something to be anti-racist.
Do something to be anti-racist. That's quotable. That should be quoted on LinkedIn, by the way, or somewhere. Do something to be anti-racist.
Put it on a shirt.
Another shirt.
There you go. There you go. That's awesome. Donna, please.
Sure. This is a time where I understand your rage. I understand your sadness, and I understand just potentially how helpless you can feel. But like Greg said, this is the time to do something. And unfortunately, it took this perfect storm where we are in a pandemic, where people are locked at home, where there's not a whole lot of other activity going on to distract from the fact that these situations and these events are happening. It is a perfect storm where everyone is poised to pay attention to the most heinous crimes we've ever seen. My only hope is that everyone who sees it understands that there's really only one right side to be on, and that is to, again, embrace humanity. There is hope. There are allies. We want to make sure that everyone is feeling activated as well as supported. And a parting message that I had for one of the directors that I work with is, as much as I hope that you are my ally, I am yours in return. Allyship works both ways. So whatever support you need, know that I'm here, and hopefully you're able to return the favor. So my only wish for you, friends, is there is hope out there. There is one right side to be on right now. We are going to get through. It's going to suck for a minute, but the hope is that the passion that you feel right now will turn into action, where you're supporting all communities, all humanity for all time.
So awesome. Allyship works both ways.
Both ways.
Right? I could be your ally and you could be mine, but I need you to lean in. I need you to pull me in and let me pull you in, and we will be better, and we will build $1 million and $1 billion companies, and our society will be better, and we will be stronger for it. Thank you so much. Be on the right side of history, right? We have a unique opportunity. We know tech is going to grow post-pandemic. We know we will be better together. I challenge you today to lean in to this conversation, right? To be uncomfortable and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That we will learn and we will grow together and we will be better, right? That if you now feel you know, differently, and you feel like I need to be a stronger ally, step in, lean in, look at your teams, right? Look at your organization, right? Be strong for change and for shift, right? You have to be anti-racist, right? There's no more sitting on the fence. Anti-racist, right? Make sure your companies are thinking about anti-Black racism, right? Because that is the conversation we are now having. I want to thank LinkedIn for their partnership and for your relationship, right? Both in here, Canada and the US, right? I want to thank you for this because, you know, for a company to say we are going to lean into this is not an easy thing, and I want to thank you. I want to thank the rest of our companies for being awesome and for being fantastic, right? You are just, you know, amazing, amazing companies that are learning and growing, and we continue to be excited to work with you and to build you up. For companies who are early in this journey, I ask you to lean in, tap in, right? And let us be part of that journey together because it's not an easy one and it's harder walking it on your own, right? The vulnerability of our community is it's on display, right? And we are committed to walking it with you if you want to walk it with us, right? So I want to ask you, go to bptn.ca, be connected, right? Go to our, you know, Slack group, and you can find that online, be connected, right? And make sure, you know, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, which is our platform of choice, right? Be connected, right? We want to make sure that you are connected, right? And if you need to diversify your network, definitely be connected, right? Thank you all so much for your, you know, engagement. Thank you for your love. Thank you for leaning into this conversation. Greg, you were amazing. Donna, you were amazing. Folks, I want you to give them just a round of applause from wherever you are because they were incredible. This conversation was fantastic, right? You know, Greg, like, you know, Donna, they're thanking you. They're smiling. They're, you know, saying how much they appreciate and love you, and you were amazing. So thank you so much for doing it, right? That concludes this conversation. Please subscribe to our newsletters and keep engaged. This is how you build your network, right? And you know, BPTN style, we will play some music so you can enjoy a little bit of in the background for the next 15 minutes or so, right? I want to thank you both for so much for being amazing, right? And you just have an awesome, awesome evening, right? Be good, you know, be engaging. A wonderful, wonderful, wonderful evening.